What's up, YouTube? I'm Comfort here. I wanted to make a post about some blog posts that I've been reading actually very recently about some really interesting things about the current format in the TCG. It's basically Rogue versus Archetype and the progression on the game. I don't know how much in depth I'm going to go into this discussion with you guys, but I actually wanted to bring up some points here. Look at Fire Fist. They're an archetype-based design, much like Mermails. I'm going to use Fire Fist as a primary example, though. They've got a lot of... Okay, first off, Fire Fist are a newer designed archetype, much like Mermails, as opposed to older designed archetypes like Blackwings, which are considered obsolete at this point in time. Looking at Fire Fist, they have the general recruiting ability, they have the monster destruction, they have the spell and trap destruction, and then they have really good XYZ support for their armada. All around, they're a very well supported archetype because they have the resources to balance them out. Now, looking back at Blackwings, yes, Blackwings do have a search card, but they don't have the primary functions of newer archetypes. The ability to blow out monsters at will, the ability to have some kind of special summon movement, much like Tensu, or, dropping multiple Mermails from your hand in one turn. Blackwings fail in comparison to that. But that's just the design gap between, 2 to 3 years ago and now. Once again, though, newer designed archetypes seem to be a lot stronger in the current meta. Basically, archetypes will do better. Because looking at Dragon Ruler Plants as a rogue-based deck, you need to dedicate to your normal summon. Basically, if your card trooper gets blown out turn 1, your deck just fails. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about that. Some players will argue, well, yes, there is. But the thing is, once you lose your one normal summon for the turn, you're going to have a very hard time coming back in this current format because that one normal summon is a lot more based and important. Another example of a deck that's going to get blown out is going to be zombies. Now, I know players are going to complain about this with me saying this, but zombies got Mizuki Plague Zombie Master, and maybe the Destiny Hero engine if you want to incorporate it. That is of your own player preference. But then at that point in time, you have to play generic staples to, hold the deck together, as opposed to Fire Fists that have a much stronger backing. Now, comparing those two decks might not be accurate, but the thing is, archetype-based decks at this current point in time have a much stronger foundation than the rogue decks that used to be strong. Unfortunately, the game has evolved to the point that, once powerful decks like Zombies, Destiny Hero, things like that, they just get outpaced by the current archetype support like Mermails and Fire Fist. There's just nothing you can do about it. The consistency of those archetypes is just much more dominant. I'm not saying that zombies can't do it every once in a while. By no stretch of the imagination can they not. But I'm just saying the current fad is the archetypes are just more strongly designed. Just so sad to say that because I was actually kind of looking forward to zombies this format. But that's just my 2 cents on this particular topic. I don't know if you guys have really noticed it yet. But the game is really being driven to archetype support. That's why the more, rogue-based decks, like the independent ones, that rely on the Destiny Hero engines, they're letting up on, because at this point in time, the archetypes are too strong, and those rogue-based decks are going to have a hard time doing anything about it. Back in the early days, when things were, more generic and more held together with staples, your side deck cards were probably a lot stronger. Now that archetypes exist, you can't side one card for 2 matchups like you used to be able to, and that's what really, really sucks. Cards that can handle multiple matchups in your sideboard will make your life 7 times more easier than anything else. Multi-based design cards are something that this game needs desperately. A card that, okay, an unhealthy format has 8 to 10 rogue or 8 to 10 decks that can be considered tier 1. That's unhealthy because when you look at your sideboard, you only have those 15 slots to dedicate to sideboard. Now, in a format much like this where you have probably 5 competitive decks, you have a little bit more side decking room because at some point 1 or 2 of those decks will be multi-purpose, and in some card somewhere along the way you can handle, that matchup, which means you don't have to dedicate totally to your sideboard. But in a format with 8 to 10 decks, only assume 2 of those decks can have multi-purpose cards. And unfortunately, it would be what? Example, Mermails, and some other deck that relies on the graveyard. Macrocosmos Defisher hits them. But other decks like Dragon Rulers just spam from the hand and stuff like that. There's nothing you can really do about it. And then, like I said, you have the Archetype-based Fire Fist that rely on the field. Things like Dino Rabbit, which don't really matter anymore. No, we'll go Evil Swarm. Evil Swarm jams the board. But, MST isn't going to stop Evil Swarm as opposed to, hurting Fire Fist in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, sorry for kind of sidetracking there a little bit. But the sad thing is, Archetypes are now running the game. Rogue decks are finally being let up on by Konami. We do need some more generic support to allow those decks to be, held together. But looking at this ban list, anything that was generic, Konami said, oh hell nah, and they destroyed it with fire. So ITT, Bottomless, Torrential, stuff like that. That was good defensive cards, but that was to balance out Heavy Storm. So, guys, tell me what you think about the Archetype versus Rogue argument. It's really interesting, I'm not going to lie, to see the progression of the game. Definitely think things out before you post comment on this video, please, in general. This is some well thought out stuff. If you've played previous formats, you can kind of see where the argument here and then lies. But yeah, so tell me what you guys think. Please leave a comment down below with something that's logical or beneficial to this argument. Stuff like that. So, guys, tell me, what do you think about the Archetype versus Rogue argument? Remember to rate, comment, subscribe, and I'm out for now, guys. Later.